Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today we're going to be painting Hydrangeas by the beach, and I'm going to be sipping on a little Pinot Noir. So let's get painted and let's get sipping. Alright, so I'm going to be using for materials today a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas, which you could certainly switch up if you'd like, but that's what I'm going to be using for my size. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. The colors are Mars Black, Cobalt Blue, Titanium White, Burnt Umber, which I'll call brown, Fluorescent Pink, Chrome Yellow, and Green Oxide. And again, you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'll be using 3 brushes today. I have a 1/2 inch wide bristle brush, a number 8 round brush, and a number 1 round brush, and I'll refer to them as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And again, you can switch those up if you'd like. If you're painting with me, you're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes, and you also need a paper towel for drying your brushes. And I've put a couple of additional resources for you down in the description below. One of the things that's down there is a link that can get you to where you can purchase this entire kit that I'm using, from the canvas to the exact colors of the paint to the brushes that I'm using. So that's there for you. There's also a downloadable image of the final painting. That's free to you. You can just print that at any time and use it as a visual reference as you go along. There's also written step-by-step instructions. So those are useful too if you want to print them and use them as you go along. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're going to do for the first step is we are painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to first mark off where I want to stop my sky, because I'm only going to come about 1/3 of the way down. So I'm going to put a little bit of brown, blue, and white all on my brush at the same time. And then I'm going to find where I perceive the 1/3 of the way to be. So to find that out, I can say, okay, maybe this is my halfway point, and maybe this is halfway between that. So I would just drop it a little bit between there, make myself a mark, and then I can use my brush as my measuring tool, because I want to make a mark on the opposing side at the same height. So I've made my eyeball mark, and now I know not to go past there. So I'm just going to reload my brush with blue, just a little bit of brown. I'm using the brown to kind of neutralize the sky so it's not too vibrant of a blue. I like to paint the top edges first, just so I can kind of see what's happening before I start on into that canvas, and I like that. I'm just adding a little bit more blue and white, and I won't pick up any more brown as I go through this process. I'm going to try and get my sky to be lighter and lighter as it comes down towards my horizon, and I'm using a circular motion with my brush in order to get the paint on. This way, it'll kind of resemble clouds just slowly drifting by on a nice, beautiful summer afternoon. Maybe your sky is a little bit lighter or darker or bluer or lighter or whiter. So whatever shade of blue your sky comes out is just going to work out just fine. And I'm just going to continue this circular motion. What's happening now is I'm just picking up white, and my sky, because I have not washed my brush, is naturally getting lighter and lighter as it comes down towards that horizon. And I'm just going to kind of keep going until I get all the way to my designated line here. And you can get it to go as light as you want down at that horizon. The more light it is, the more kind of dramatic it's going to look as it hits the ocean horizon, but you'll see how that works out in a minute. So I'm just finishing up here with these light colors. Sometimes it's hard to see if you've covered the whole area. So when you're all done, just kind of look back, maybe put your head back for a minute, make sure that you have painted all of the sky. I am just kind of swirling my brush around just to make sure I get into all those little nooks and crannies. And then we are going to use the same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. So you can prepare yourself by washing and drying that large brush and just get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our water. So I'm going to use my big brush, and I'm going to be using brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have my water really dark at the top, and it's going to be really light at the bottom. I will show you how to make a seemingly straight horizon line in a minute without a ruler, so that's always fun. But before we do that, I want to kind of section off where the beach is going to meet the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue on my brush, not a lot. Like you can even wipe it off on your paper or on your palette. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to make a mark about a quarter of the way between my horizon line and the bottom of my canvas. And to know where that is, you can just kind of eyeball the halfway mark and then split the difference in the top half and just make yourself a mark. So that's going to be about a quarter of the way. And then you're going to come to the halfway point at the bottom of your canvas, and then I want you to come to the left maybe, I don't know, two inches or so. And now I'm going to make myself a very uneven line. I'm going to hardly touch my canvas, and I'm not going to use a lot of the paint. And I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush back and forth like this. This is, and you can probably hear it's really scratchy right now because I hardly have any paint on my brush. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side. I'm going to come down at about the same height, maybe about a quarter of the way. And then I'm going to do the same thing, just going to connect these two with a really messy line. And that's going to be where my water is going to go. So I'm going to reload my brush with blue and brown. And this time I am going to squish my brush in the side of my palette. And when I do that, what happens is my bristles come together. They like get all nice and squished together, and it makes it a little bit easier for me to do this step. So I'm going to make my horizon line, but I'm going to make 2 dots first. These dots should probably be similar to your first 2 dots, but I like to redo it just in case they shifted during the painting process. My water has to be 100% in my sky, so you don't want any unpainted area between your water and your sky. So I'm going to just kind of eyeball. I see some unpainted canvas right about here, so that's going to look like that's going to be my spot I want. I'm going to measure it with my brush. I see where that is, so I'm going to come over to this side and make myself a dot in the same spot. And now I'm going to connect those two with one line. So how I do this is I'm going to push my brush into my bristles into my canvas, something like this, and I'm going to pull it across or push it, whatever way is easier, left to right or right to left for you. And I always keep my eye on the prize, which is the other dot. If you run out of paint along the way, you can pick up a little bit more or just go for it, and then you can adjust it when you're done. I also rest my hand on my canvas. That keeps me a little bit stable. So here I go. I've got my paint loaded. I am keeping my eye on the prize, which is my other dot. I am running out of paint already, so I'm going to just go reload my brush. I reloaded, and I'm going to just keep going. I'm watching my other dot, and it's okay if you wobble a little bit. That's what happens to our hands when we do this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and make any little modifications that I think I might need. Like I think I dipped a little bit in through there. And we are going to be putting a big island and some big flowers. So if your horizon line is not perfect, don't worry about it. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the rest of my water in. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke. And as I come down the water, I'm not going to pick up any more brown. I'm going to, my next time I dip my brush, I'm dipping it in blue and white. And what's going to happen after that is I will dip my brush in just white, and what'll happen is my water is going to get a little bit lighter and lighter as it comes down into that beachy area. So again, I'm just going left to right, And you'll watch, as you watch me, you're going to see that I at times go back up into a previous section or into the previous area. That's going to help me to blend it in with that previous area. And when you get towards where you're meeting the land on the left and the right, keep that line messy. You don't want to have a clean line in through there because we're going to have our beach rolling into our water. So as you're doing this, you know, don't worry about details. Just picture yourself maybe sailing off, maybe going deep sea fishing, listening to the ocean breeze as you're, you know, tucked away on your little secluded section of the beach that we're going to be painting in a minute. So I'm just kind of going right down to that beachy area. I am trying to get it lighter and lighter as I get down into this little V section down here. And at times you can almost crisscross it if you want to. That's going to give you a natural kind of ripple to the water. But you do want to make sure that you get all the way into that land area. It doesn't have to be a perfect line. And then we are going to use the same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. And get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna be painting next is our beachy area in through here. I'm gonna be using my large brush and I'm gonna be using brown and white. You might wanna add a little bit of yellow or a little bit of your pink, but I'm just gonna use brown and white. And how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna take a touch of brown, not a lot. This is how I'm gonna start it. And I'm going to do kind of a messy line that is going to cross over into my water a little bit. So this is going to, in essence, kind of be the basis for the wet part of the sand, and it's going to show the water coming into the sand, and it's going to show like different tones of it. So it's a really cool, easy way to get that sand to look wet on the edge. And then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of white. And now I'm going to just start to almost do circles and kind of get that brown to blend in a little bit. Picking up a little bit more white. And you can have your sand as light or as dark as you want. I don't like to pre-mix the color of the sand on my palette because I definitely want to have some light spots and some dark spots to it. So that's why you'll see that I am just kind of picking up the white and the brown as I go and letting happen whatever is going to happen on the canvas. So that way I do have some light spots and some dark spots. Again, you might want to have it have a little bit of a yellowish hue to it, or maybe you could use yellow and pink and have it like a little peachy. So whatever tone is good for you is totally fine. And you just want to imagine yourself, you know, having this soft kind of sand for your toes to walk through, and maybe you're listening to the ocean waves crashing coming in. I'm going to show you how to get those waves to come in right now. So now that I've got my beach, the sand on there, I'm going to dip my brush into white paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm almost going to put the white caps that are just rolling in. And the easiest way to do this is kind of on the top side of your brown marks. So I've got my brush and I'm going to kind of just get some little crashy waves coming in here. I use my brush a little bit in a down angle here. And you don't necessarily want them all to be straight coming in. So I've got some at an angle. This also, you can make it look like little veins coming into the land. So whatever visually works for you. I've got some going out into the water. I've got some kind of crashing into the land here, into the beachy area. You can get this to look really rough or really, you know, gentle, whatever, you know, your brain is telling you is going to look nice. That totally works. And you are going to have your hydrangeas over on the right hand side, so don't worry about getting this side too perfect. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of pushing it so the firmer edge or the whiter edge is down towards that beach a little bit. And again, you could have as much of this as you want. The louder you want your waves to crash, the more white areas you want to put in there. So when you feel like you've got a nice assortment of these light white caps coming on in and wetting your sand, we are going to use this brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. So once you've got this all nice and taken care of, I think that looks pretty good, then you can just wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing in this step is we are doing the base coat of our hydrangeas. We're going to be using black, blue, and pink for this particular step. We're going to be using our large bristle brush. I'm super excited about this because I totally love hydrangeas. I don't think I love them as much as Lana Del Rey though. She actually wrote a song about them.
Blue hydrangea, gold cash divine.
But I definitely love them, not as much as yellow roses, but I definitely love them. So I'm kind of excited about this. So here we go. I'm gonna do my left section first, and then I'm gonna do my right section. My right section is gonna be smaller and off in the distance, so that's gonna be kind of small. The left section is going really high up into the sky, and it's gonna definitely cross over where we have the beachy area hitting this section. So all I'm going to do, all my brain is going to tell me to do is paint circles, and I want it dark at the bottom, light at the top, and a very uneven circle kind of edge over on the right hand side. So here I go. I'm going to start with black and blue paint on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to start with these circles. I'm always going to use the circles because that's going to tell me when I do get to my silhouette edge that those circles are going to create the shape of the flower. I don't use black for very long because I know how strong the black is and it can easily take over and make the whole thing black. So I'll probably only pick it up to about here, and then I won't pick up black anymore. Right now I'm picking up blue and black, and I want an uneven edge coming over here. Maybe I do a couple of little tiny ones down at the bottom here. My brush is hitting my easel. It's making a clicking noise. Sorry about that. And then as I go up in through here, I think I'm gonna pop this one out into my ocean a little bit. I'm gonna start picking up just blue to work that black, start working that black off of my brush. And again, as I'm coming out into the ocean where I'm making my silhouette, I'm just gonna make these round edges, or the shape of circles at the edges. And you don't want it to be too systematic or too in a row all the same size. So I'm definitely going to change it up a little bit, especially as I go up higher. Now, again, I'm still not washing my brush, but I'm going to pick up blue and pink. This is going to turn into a really nice dark purple, and that's going to be the base for some of these as they go towards the top. And again, I want it to be uneven around this edge, so I'm going to consciously make sure that I've got, I think I'm going to push this out just a little bit more. Make sure I've got enough of these hydrangeas. I really want a full canvas. I'm going to put this a little bit past the halfway mark, so I'm just bringing this out a little bit further. I'm only picking up blue right now, and if you run into some wet paint from your beach, no worries. We can totally just blend that in. Maybe bring this out a little bit further. And again, I'm just having these circles. That's the shape of the hydrangea. So you just make big old circles. At the top, I'm going to put some more pink on my brush. So now I've got some pink turning into this beautiful purpley kind of color. And this will look way better when we put all of our details on later. And if you can see the horizon behind that, don't worry, that will definitely be hidden. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go do a little batch of them down in that bottom right hand corner. I'm not washing my brush, I'm just picking up a teeny tiny bit of black and blue. And again, I'm probably going to get these to come maybe about 2/3 of the way up that beach. You could even touch them to the top. Whatever works for you is totally fine for me. And I'm going to have them take up about almost half of my beach, but I don't want them to go too far over to the left. Picking up a little bit of pink now, just to get some of this purple to be represented. And then we are going to switch brushes to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat on here, you can put this big brush away in your water cup, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are using our medium brush, and we're going to be painting it kind of looks like an island, but it's sand dunes. So this, especially this part, but the whole painting is really, it's inspired by the Cape Cod, which is in Massachusetts, and which I've been to many times. It's a beautiful place. But so they have these sand dunes all over the place, and they actually, believe it or not, they have a hydrangea festival. So they love their hydrangeas out at the Cape. I don't suspect Madonna's ever been there during their hydrangea festival. I hear she does not like hydrangeas. I'm not quite sure why, because they're so beautiful, but go ahead, and I'm going to load up my brush to do these sand dunes in the back. So the colors that I am using are brown, white, black, green, and yellow. So I am going to create the base of the sand dunes with just brown and white on my brush. So it's going to be the same color that I used for the sand. You could pre-mix a sand color or just use them both at the same time on your brush, and that's going to give you a natural color going across. And all I'm really going to do initially is make a line at above the horizon, or at the top of the horizon. If you bump into the water, don't worry about it, because we're going to actually put a shadow underneath, and this is land, so it does not have to be a perfect line. Even though you probably already have a nice beautiful horizon line, I'm going to make you mess it up right here. So I'm not going to, you could bring it all the way over to the hydrangeas. I'm going to cut it short by maybe an inch or two, and I'm just going to make myself a line. I think I'm going to need a little bit more brown on my brush. Oh, maybe not. There we go. I can see it now. And you want varying colors of the brown and the white. So if you have lighter spots or darker spots, that's okay, because I'm going to make you make different shades of it in a minute here. So it's all right if it's naturally turning into different shades. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make myself an uneven top to it. And how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush and make a couple of like little sand dune mounds. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to put green and brown on my brush at the same time. Green and brown. And this is where I'm going to put the grass and the dirt at the top of it. So I've got green and brown on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle it at the top. And you can do more brown at times, you can do more green other times, whatever works for you. If you can get it to be more of a firm line on top and get that color to kind of fade into the sand, that'll make it look a little bit more natural. And now I'm going to put green and yellow on my brush, because I want it to look a little bit lighter and brighter over here on the left hand side. So I did green and yellow, and this is going to make it look like the sunshine's hitting it a bit more. Now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just wiping it on my paper towel like that. I'm picking up a teeny tiny bit of black paint, and I'm doing a shadow underneath the edge of the little sand dunes, as if it's maybe off the ground a little bit or above the water a little bit. And this is just really to make sure that you have a nice clean edge. Oops, I must have had a little bit of white left on my brush there, so I just picked up a little bit more black. Making sure I have a nice dark edge under there just helps with the illusion. And then I'm not going to wash my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown. And what the brown is going to do is I'm going to start making myself what I'm going to refer to as like the shoreline. So I'm picking up a little bit of brown on my brush. I'm going to come into the land a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle myself some little dark areas that are going to resemble maybe rocks along the shore or little places to land or to walk, you know, something that's going to give it a little bit of dimension. And you can just fiddle around with your light spots and your dark spots along the edge of that land, and that's going to make it look a little bit more natural. So it's not just a white line next to a black line. And then we are going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sand dunes all nice and realized, you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are painting our fence. So I'm actually going to be using two brushes for this step. I'm going to use my medium and my small brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are black, brown, and white. I'm going to start with my medium brush. I'm not going to use the small brush for a while, so don't worry about that. So with this fence, it's an old rickety beach fence made of weathered beech wood. So I just want you to know it does not need to be perfect. Your fence posts can be leaning, they could be one's wider than the other, they can be different colors from one another, so don't have any anxiety over these fence posts being perfect. It's not the beautiful picket white fence that's going to be in, you know, somebody's front yard. It's a weathered beach fence. So I want to give this painting the illusion that we're maybe walking down some steps down into the beach. So I'm going to give it some perspective with my fence is going to be tall and wide on the outside, and then it's going to get smaller as we're seemingly going down the steps. So in my head also, my sun is going to be illuminating this piece more. So my fence posts, I'm going to make them whiter on this side or lighter on this side and a little bit darker on this side. Like these are a little bit in the shadow. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put black, brown, and white on my brush at the same time. So I have brown, white, and black at the same time on my brush. And I'm going to start with my outside posts, and then I'm going to go to my inside posts. So then I will have a visual starting and stopping point. So the biggest one that we're going to do is the one on the left-hand side. I do want to caution you though that you want to make sure your canvas is dry before you start this step, at least where you're going to put your fence. So if you have to, you know, just take an extra break or something before you start the step. Or blow on it, or you could always use a blow dryer just to get it dry. So I'm going to start my biggest one over here on the left-hand side. If this is the distance of the area from your horizon to the bottom, you want to come about, I would say about a quarter of the way down. So eyeball where your halfway point is, which is about here, and then go about halfway between your finger and here to get to your quarter way mark. And then I'm going to come, I'm making myself a line that's going to come in about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and I'm going to come straight down and I'm going to color that in. That's going to be my first fence post. And it's okay if your line isn't perfect. You don't actually want it to be perfect. You could get yours to come all the way to the edge of your canvas, or you could leave a little bit of a space between the edge and that particular fence post. Whatever visually works for you is fine by me. Then I'm going to do my smallest one, which is going to be near the center of my canvas, and it's going to be really small and it's going to be skinny. So I've got the 3 colors on my brush, and I'm going to go, let's see if this is my halfway point, and you might find that yours goes above your hydrangea, whatever you have down here, or below it. It doesn't matter. And I'm only going to do it really kind of skinny down there. I'm going to, before I start painting these in, I'm going to go put my first and my small one and my big one on the right hand side too, because I want this one, I want, just so I'm in my planning process, I want my first one here to be smaller than this one here. So I'm gonna reload my brush with just white, get my paint cup out of the way here. And I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller because I wanna give the illusion that that's down the steps a little bit. So here I go. I'm gonna make myself a little tiny one right here. And then I'm gonna make a bigger one over here, but it definitely is not gonna be this high. So I would probably just put it maybe to about here. And again, I want this right side to be a little bit lighter in color. Now I've got my starting and my stopping points for each. Now it's just a matter of making yourself some fence posts. So I reloaded with brown, black, and white. And I want my fence posts to be kind of close together. If you can give the illusion of them getting wider as well as taller as they're coming towards the left, great. But if you find that you're going all the same width, that's all right. You'll still get a good illusion with the height variation. I've got mine pretty close together. You might want yours to be wider apart, doesn't matter. It's all a matter of how much of that background you want to see between it. I'm just going for kind of an illusion. I don't really want them to see my detail behind my fence because I know I didn't fully render my detail behind the fence. I just kind of gave it the color I wanted. So totally up to you. You can make as many fence posts as you want. I'm trying to make them bigger as I go along. I am using a good amount of paint so that way it flows well for me. I don't have much space left here, but I'm gonna sneak in 2 more posts here, just making them nice and close together. You might find that you've gauged the width in a weird way when you get to these last couple of ones, but that's okay. They don't have to be exactly the same width. That's the beauty of the old rickety beach fence. They can be, you know, different size pieces of wood. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, the right-hand side, but I'm going to make them a little bit lighter in color. I think I'm gonna darken this one before I go further, just adding a little bit more of that darker gray to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do these ones. I just picked up white. I didn't pick up any of the other colors, and I didn't wash my brush, so that's going to naturally make these little guys a little bit lighter than the ones I had on the left-hand side. And again, I'm not really paying much attention to the detail at the top of them because I know that I'm going to be hiding a lot of them with hydrangeas, the top of them, so I'm really not terribly concerned about that. And then I'm going to quickly switch brushes to my little brush and do the little, like, I don't know if it's wire or string or what it is in between them, but something to connect my fence posts. So I've got a little bit of all 3 colors on here, and then I'm just making these little tiny lines in between. And if you don't get them perfect, don't worry about it. I'm going to do 3 rows on this side. I'm going to make this middle row almost go, for perspective purposes, it almost goes straight. It's at a less of an angle than that top one. And then this bottom one is going to go just about horizontal to the bottom of my canvas, just to give me a little bit more perspective, as if these are getting closer to us here. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this right side. Maybe the right side I only see 2 of them because it's farther down the stairwell. So I'm just going to do 2 rows of these little strings or wire that are in between. And then we're going to switch brushes to our large brush for the next step, so you can put your small brush away and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing our second layer of the hydrangeas. So we're going to use our big bristle brush, and we're going to be using black, blue, and pink, and just a tiny bit of white. So you can really make your hydrangeas whatever color you want. There are so many different colors. There's so many different species. I know that each color represents a different emotion. Like, I think pink is for love and blue is for forgiveness. I can't remember what white is for. I know that they have purple ones. So, I mean, I'm going to go for some blue and pink. So I'm imagining this to be a very loving and forgiving atmosphere. So you can totally make yours whatever color you want. But what we're going to be doing in this step is we're doing the kind of the undercoat or the middle kind of coat of those petals. And we're giving ourselves we're telling ourselves where each particular flower is going to be laid out at this point. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to start with black and blue on my brush. And then that's the only time I'm going to use black. I'm going to use, maybe I'll probably pop it in a couple of little areas over here, but then after that I'm just going to use blue and pink, and then I'm going to end that step with just a little bit of the white. So here I go. I'm going to start with blue and just a touch of black, because I really want to make sure that there's enough shadow down in through here to make sure that it represents that this is the shadowed area. I'm going to be applying my paint with dots. I'm not going to do the swirls anymore. So this is going to be the dots. And if you end up hitting one of your fence posts, who cares? That's just going to mean that the flower is growing over it. I'm totally not concerned about that. Adding just a little bit more black on my brush, make sure that you can see it. And I'm just making sure that I have a nice shadowy area at the bottom of these flowers. And then maybe I'll add maybe a little bit of shadow in through some of these areas, just to kind of set the stage and make sure that there's enough dimension and depth in there. And now I'm not picking up black again. I'm going to start picking up blue and pink, which is going to give me a nice kind of like purpley look. And now's where I start to form the tops of those flowers, or the circular type structure of those flowers. We've already kind of done that on the edges of them, but now we're really starting to realize each one individually. So if I want one here, I can kind of say, okay, well, this one's going to be in front, so I'm going to give that one an edge, and maybe the one that sits behind it is maybe a little bit more purple. So this, again, is giving us a nice roadmap. It's taken away that firm brush stroke that we had at the edges, so we're softening those edges. Maybe I've got a little bit of pink ones down here. The pink and the blue together are going to make an awesome purpley kind of color, so you can use them in conjunction with each other at any time. I'm setting my stage here for a couple of huge ones over here. So nice big ones over here. I'm using that black area as a nice shadow. I've got one going on up here. I'm going to move my canvas just a tiny bit here. There we go. It was rattling too much for me. So sometimes maybe you pick up just blue. Sometimes maybe you pick up blue and the pink. Whatever works for you to get yourself able to see the difference, or see, in essence, kind of the top of one. That's the goal in this particular step. And I'm going to get just a little bit on the edge. And now I'm picking up blue, purple, or blue, pink, a little bit of blue, a little bit of pink, and just a tiny bit of white. This is going to help me start. I'm going to start to highlight the edges of those flowers. I'm not doing much. I'm really almost doing this more for my own visual sense, so I can understand where I'm going to have these flowers. I don't want to mush the color in too much. I really am just trying to get myself to understand where each individual flower is going to go. And then once you have this step all done, oops, I got these little tiny ones over on the right hand side. Can't forget about those ones. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple tiny little ones over here. And then we are going to be switching to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this second layer of your hydrangeas, you can put this brush away in your water cup and take out your, oh, I want a couple little ones, sorry. This is where my brain kind of eludes me. I want some poking out of these fence posts. Okay, now I'm done. Okay, medium brush for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are painting the leaves between these beautiful flowers. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, green, yellow, and white. So I love greenery. I love hydrangeas, but I really love greenery better. And if you watch some of my other videos, oh my God, I just go to town when I'm doing wild grass and all kinds of leaves and stuff. It's just a fun aspect of painting for me. So you're gonna notice in this step, once I give you the instruction, I'm just gonna go at it and I'm just gonna paint. But you can certainly, of course I'll talk through the whole thing because I talk through the whole thing every step, but I wanna give you some direction before I start frenetically painting them. So I want my leaves to be the darkest down in this bottom left. So that's why I'm gonna use a little bit of black first, and I'm gonna kind of lay the foundation for some really dark leaves in through here. And then by the time I get up in through the edges and maybe some in between, those are gonna have more of the yellow and the green and the white. And definitely the ones over here are gonna be brighter. You can have some poking out your fence. I know, because I've already planned where the tops of my flowers are, or where every flower is, that the leaves are gonna go in between those. So if I have a top to my flower here, I'm gonna have little leaves poking out the corners. I can see I have a dark spot here, and the top of this flower is gonna be here. So that would make sense to have some of those leaves popping out there. And then around the edges, you can have them popping out anywhere, because that's gonna be just the back side of the flower. You do want to try and not be systematic. So that's why I go fast, because I just start having fun and start flicking away. The leaves on the hydrangeas are kind of like pointy. They're almost like an oval that's pointy on both sides, but I don't really care about that. I'm just gonna have fun painting. I'm gonna have green leaves. I'm not terribly concerned if they're exactly the right one for this particular flower. I'm gonna make them look pretty similar, but I'm not putting veins in them or anything like that. I'm just gonna have fun. So how I'm gonna start this is I am going to start with green and black on my brush, because I'm going to get these dark ones kind of out of the way first. And while they're drying, I'm going to go have fun doing some light ones, and then I might come back and put a little bit of highlights on them. So, oops, I just totally dripped paint all over my hand. Before I make a big old mess with that, let me wipe it off. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to kind of push my brush as if it's coming out of the fence and just kind of flick it. And I love to reload my brush often. These can come in varying shade or varying directions as they're coming out of the fence. I'm not going to put them as if it's growing on top of the fence, but I'll definitely put them like leaning over the fence. I'm putting some black ones, so that way it definitely looks like they're in the shadow, or they are the shadow of another one. And I'm trying not to be very systematic, so maybe I've got one coming out here, and maybe I've got some coming off of here. But I'm not going to do too many. I don't want to overwhelm it with leaves coming out everywhere. So now I still am just using black and green, and I'm going to start going in these darker areas. So I've got some coming in through here. And as I start, once I cross over like this halfway point, then I'm gonna stop using black, and I'll just use green for a while. Again, I'm just kind of going in the little, what I perceive to be the little spots between the flowers. And you don't have to hit every single one. You don't have, two flower heads can be next to each other without leaves sticking out. So just know that that's fine to do. You don't have to really do every single one. And then I'm going to kind of go over here and do some of my darker ones before I start using the yellow and white. And I'm just going to kind of keep going in through here. Now I'm going to start to use yellow, green, and white on my brush. And this is where you're going to start to see these really vibrant ones just kind of popping out. You can have a couple of them popping out in through there. Maybe I've got some over here. And again, don't do every single one. You know, just have the little clusters of leaves. They don't have to be between every single one. You want it to look natural. You want it to look like Mother Nature has created varying, you know, lengths of these particular leaves in varying directions, in varying sizes. So definitely, you know, use a sense of diversity as you're making these leaves. I'm going to go over to this right-hand side, make myself a couple maybe popping through the fence or across the edge. And you can see I'm just really almost flicking my brush at times just to kind of create the illusion of life in these leaves. I just picked up green and yellow just to put some highlights on these darker ones in through here. I do still want them to be dark, but I don't want them to be flat black. I think I just got a couple more in through here, and that looks pretty good to me. This is kind of systematic over here, but I'll rectify that as, ooh, I want some down here. I'll rectify that when I put those final highlights. So we're going to be switching back to the big brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your leaves in place, you can wash and dry your big brush and get ready. See, now I can't stop. Get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step of these beautiful hydrangea flowers, which is bringing them to life with highlights. So I'm going to use my big bristle brush that I have here, and I am going to be using blue, pink, and white. I'm going to be using the edge of my brush, and I'm going to be using this dotting, or the technical term is stippling, step, where I am just using the corner of my brush and making teeny tiny dots throughout the whole thing. This is going to give you the impression of all the little petals that are on these flowers. You could painstakingly take a smaller brush and do each individual petal, but I just like to have fun, so I'm going to do my stippling technique to create the illusion of these hydrangeas. So I do want the ones on this side to be big, and then the ones over here are going to be smaller. So when I go over to this side, I'll be using more of the corner of my brush as opposed to the full-on edge of my brush. I do also know that the way that I've kind of put them on the canvas, that my light side of them is going to be on the right side. So my highlights are going to be on the right side of each flower. So as I'm doing this dotting technique, I will start light and work my way kind of into the darkness of each one. So I'll show you what I mean. So again, I'm going to be using blue, pink, and white. So I'm just going to put all three of those colors on my brush at the same time. And you don't need a lot of paint. So the more paint you have, the more apt you are to just smush, smush, smush it, and it's all going to turn into one color. So the more you can concentrate on less paint and just use the tip of your brush, the more you'll be able to control it. So what I'm going to initially do is just kind of outline the tops of my, or the right side of each one of my flowers. So I think I'm going to have one there. I'm going to kind of have one there, one here. And this is a kind of a little tedious step, but once you've got the real information of where you want each little flower to go, I mean, which we've already done, but now you are really giving them their identity and saying, okay, this one is here. Okay, this one is definitely here. Don't lose yourself in here. I just had to put my head back so I could see my dark spot and my light spot. And I'm going to put a big one here. Maybe I've got a little one kind of creeping over here. I definitely have one in through here. and maybe you use more pink than white in some areas, or maybe you use more of the blue in some areas. And again, I'm just really kind of making sure I know before I start going all crazy with my highlights, making sure I know where each flower actually is. And because that's the one thing about these flowers is they are probably the most organized looking flower out there. Even though they're big and they're round and they're fluffy, they're so, you can really detect each and every single flower. It's its own thing. It's a really cool thing about them. And so I think that's going to be the placement on those ones. I'm going to go over to this right hand side, make sure I've got my placement on these ones, and then I will start to systematically kind of make sure that they have dimension. And how that I'm going to do that is I've got the brightest side over there on the right, and then I'm going to slowly make it darker, have it come into the darkness. So again, you don't need a lot of paint. If that's going to be your brightest spot, I didn't wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of blue, and now I'm going to lightly almost just dot it until it disappears into the darkness. And I'm going to do that to every one. I want it brighter on the edge, and I want it to kind of disappear into the darkness. And again, you can have some blue on top of pink. You can have some pink on top of blue. These are beautiful flowers with multiple layers. They can come with pink and blue all muddled together in one. So, if you find yourself with one flower that has pink, purple, blue, all on the same flower, that's okay. They have those too for you. So just know that whatever shade of pink, blue, or purple you come up with is totally fine. And again, these are darker over here, so I'm not going to go too crazy with the highlights. And I'm just going to keep going until I feel like I've got enough texture, a textural effect on these that you can really see the difference on each one. You can see that there's a highlight and a shadow on each one, and that I have conveyed the message that these in fact are hydrangeas. So I'm just going to kind of keep going through. And if you feel at any time that you need to do a little bit more black in there, feel free to do so. What I'm doing for my darker areas is I'm not picking up any more white. I'm just picking up more pink and blue just to make sure I still have some textured elements even in those dark areas. And if you bump into one of your pretty green leaves and you feel like you need to, add a little bit more onto that, feel free to do so. Don't forget about your little tiny baby ones here in the fence. And I'm just going to kind of keep going until I feel that I have enough of a pop on these that you can really, really tell that they are what they are. So I take my time on this particular step. So if you get bored of listening to me talk, then I'm sorry, you can always mute me. But I'm just going to keep going until my hydrangeas are as bright and as beautiful as I want them to be. And again, I just kind of keep progressively, now that I've really identified where they all go, I'm just adding more lightness to that brighter side. So I've added a little bit more white and maybe pink over there on that brighter side, or you don't always have to take the brightness all the way to the edge. Maybe the brightest spot is in through here as opposed to the tippy edge of it. So just know that these are round objects, and the brightest of the bright doesn't have to be just on the edge of it. It can certainly be in the interior of it a little bit. And I'm just going to keep going. And if when you're done with these, you feel like you might, maybe you want to add a little bit more highlight to your leaves, or to anything, to your water or anything of that nature, feel free to do so. I'm going to just kind of make sure that I've got these little guys all nice and represented. I can't forget about the right hand side over here. These I want to be even brighter. And if you come to a spot where you're like, oh my God, everything's just looking muddled, it's all looking the same color, and I definitely want there to be different colors, wash and dry your brush. There's nobody watching you. You don't need to, prove anything by using a dirty brush the whole time. So just make sure, at any time you wash and dry that brush if you feel like you need to add or you feel like it's just all blending together. I think I want to make this one a little bit bigger and a little bit more bold. And I'm just going to, like I said, this takes me a minute to get this done. So I can have it as bright and as beautiful as I want. I think that's looking pretty good. And I'm gonna just add a little bit more pink in through here. And then we do have one teeny tiny little step to do once you've got these flowers all nice and rendered as beautiful as you want them to be. And it's gonna be with that tiny brush. So when you get this done, you can wash and dry the tiny brush and get ready for the final step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of any painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. You could sign yours wherever you want. I'm gonna use my small brush. I'm gonna use black paint, and I think I'm gonna sign it over here in the left. I think I'm gonna sign it on this fence post, so that way you can see it. I do my initials. You could do your first name or the date or whatever you want to do. This is your identifying mark. You can make it into whatever you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your beautiful, happy hydrangeas. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.